Welcome, folks. This is a crash course in writing sci-fi movies and TV from Script Camp. Let's get going. So, if you are requested to speak, make sure to click this accept button at the top of that green bar. And if you're watching on one of our other sites like YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Discord, or Facebook, you should come join us on our Discord for Script Camp. We are part of this larger group of servers called Skill Camp. We are Discord servers that are intended to help take you from your idea to finished draft of your script, at least here on Script Camp, but we have many other classes, free and low-cost classes to help you reach your life goals. So check us out, Script Camp, Word Camp, Code Camp. All these different servers are intended to act as communities for you to meet other people trying to do the same things that you are, and also work through these incremental programs to get better at these skills over time, to work through these boot camps that give you objectives and deadlines and this kind of live interactive weekly instruction. We have over 100 hours of different classes per month. Here's what's coming up. We have sci-fi right now. Later today, we have table reads starting right after, and we have copyright class for screenwriters. That's at 5 p.m., taught by our co-founder, Nacho. We have a class in writing better dialogue, Thursday, May 11th at 6. Scene workshop, May 14th at 1. Writing monsters and villains, May 14th at 5. So you can find all those here on our Script Camp Discord server. With new fiction classes coming to Word Camp soon, we'll be announcing dates for the new boot camp in the next few weeks. All right, so boot camp times, Fridays 6 to 8. We have TV, novels. We are running Saturdays 12 to 2, and features right now is running 10 to noon. That just started today on Sundays, and it's going to be running for 8 weeks, so it's not too late to join any of feature or TV. Novel boot camp is almost over, but once that new one starts, you should come join us if you want to write a novel in 12 weeks. All right, let's get into sci-fi. In this kind of hour-long crash course workshop, you're going to just work on this understanding of the categories and styles of sci-fi, hard versus soft, utopian, dystopian, fantasy, and all the others, and the various kind of quirks of writing the genre specifically for film and TV. We're also going to brainstorm ideas for features or TV shows based on headlines and picture prompts, all in the kind of world of speculative science. So I think the first half of the class will be more like the slides, and next half of the class will be we'll need volunteers to do these activities with us, where we're going to look at picture prompts and come up with ideas for movies based on these scientific ideas in the news. So just be thinking of if you might want to volunteer, so when we get to that second half hour, you can let us know. Okay, let's get into it. So we'll start with what is sci-fi, hard versus soft, tones, flavors, and subgenres, and just some of the concepts that you should be familiar with if you're writing these things. And obviously, you should be a fan of sci-fi if you're trying to write sci-fi. I would not try to write it if you don't read it, watch it, or listen to it. We'll look at this kind of list of sci-fi topics and kind of look at the big ideas that your script might revolve around. And what is a big idea in terms of sci-fi writing anyway? So we'll get into how you can find that sort of kernel of a speculative concept that your movie can revolve around, and how to kind of dig deeper into that. We will look a little bit at sci-fi loglines specifically, and then we can start pitching loglines based on these picture prompts and these fun little inspirations for our sci-fi stories. It's okay if you don't end up with an awesome logline at the end of it. We just are kind of tossing around ideas today. Let's get into it. So, what is sci-fi? Fiction that deals principally with the impact of actual or imagined science upon society or individuals. So the thing about sci-fi is that it can kind of touch against any other genre. We can have sci-fi action adventure stories. We can have sci-fi comedy. You can have sci-fi drama. Sci-fi is more about the subject matter that story will comprise or will encompass or will interact with. So you can definitely have sci-fi stories that are of any sort of emotional appeal. Might touch on things like prophetic warnings about the future, or wondering where things are going in terms of bad things that could happen to us. Or maybe we could go at the other end of the spectrum to utopian sort of aspirations. We might imagine new worlds or voyages that are not currently possible to the center of the Earth or to the distant reaches of space, voyages through time or through the human body or through different dimensions, things like this. They might be speculative political scenarios. Something like The Purge is kind of sci-fi in its own way. We have horrific cautionary tales, which is a favorite method of writing sci-fi, or a favorite kind of area of sci-fi. Everything from your giant storms to your giant monsters created by radiation to anything that has some kind of grounding in a scientific principle, even if it exaggerates that idea far beyond the point which would ever really be possible. But, sometimes you are surprised, and ultimately the difference between sci-fi and fantasy is mostly, is this something that is impossible and that will never be possible? Well, then, in that case, we're looking at fantasy. Whereas if it revolves around principles that are not possible now but might, in theory, one day kind of be, then that is more along the lines of sci-fi. So it may be presented in the form of very quiet character pieces or big action movies, satire, allegory, parody, every kind of conceivable attitude towards the process of techno-social change, from cynical despair all the way to very optimistic. So you can have any sort of attitude or approach in sci-fi. Different things have different levels of popularity. We have everything kind of with trends will be changing what people are looking for, what's really popular at the time. There is some speculation, for instance, that the John Carpenter movie The Thing from the the 80s horror movie about the evil alien maybe didn't do so well because it came out right around the same time as E.T., and people weren't in the headspace to kind of accept these diametrically opposite ideas of what extraterrestrial life could be like at one time. That's one sort of proposed or suggested theory as to why that movie didn't do well in its initial release. But who knows? It's just sort of to show you that tastes change, times change, ideas about science change, and what at one point is old hat or might be completely alien to us might later be the opposite, right? It might later become overfamiliar, or it might become irrelevant later, or it might be silly to look at sci-fi at some point because technology has passed far beyond what that movie even thought would be possible. So that leads to interesting kind of scenarios like we watch early episodes of Next Generation Star Trek, where they have data, like tablets essentially, and then when all the crew receives their mail, then they have a stack of tablets that they hand out to each person that has their digital mail on it. And it's just so weird to look back at now because we're like, okay, they got something right. They got the idea that there would be all that digital information on the device, but not the idea that everyone would have their own device that they would simply wirelessly download that information to. The idea of handing out the tablets might just be something you run into if technology sort of surpasses or laps you in terms of the actual possibilities. Here's a question from Meep in the chat. So sci-fi doesn't necessarily have to involve hard sciences. It can be socio-political things too. Do I have other examples from just The Purge? I would say I don't have a lot of examples of that, and most of the time it actually does have to be some kind of technological change or speculation in the story. Like some people might consider The Purge to sort of be adjacent to sci-fi in the same way that we might think something like how about the movie The Lobster, which takes place in an alternate world where society just works in a super different way. Like you have to have a partner, and if you don't have a partner for a certain amount of time, they send you to essentially like a hotel that's kind of like a prison, and you're forced to sort of find a partner, and if you don't, they turn you into an animal. So there is a sort of technological kind of, or fantastical, I don't even know what that is. I would say for the most part, you do have to have that technology. The Purge may not be the best example overall, if I'm going to walk back my own point a little bit. But then again, there are, like, The Purge does take place in the future, and it is a completely different society that has evolved, in some instances, as a result of technological changes, so the argument can sometimes be made. All right, let's look at hard versus soft. So hard means science and tech are integral to the plot. The science is based on proven principles, so stuff that is repeatable and is at least theoretically possible, or could in some way be theoretically possible at some point. The emphasis here is going to be on plausibility and strict rules. The plot might hinge on applications of math, physics, chemistry, or other fields based in hard data. There's not going to be fantasy, and there's a little less emphasis on this sense of grandeur and wonder. We can still run into that, of course. There will still be some sense of wonder, maybe in hard sci-fi, but it's not going to be the primary appeal of this version of the genre. This might be things like Ex Machina, The Martian, where these are like based on things like AI and space travel that are, like 50 years ahead of where we are maybe, but not thousands of years ahead of where we are. Gravity is another one where it's like, this is basically a somewhat plausible scenario today. Interstellar is I would call hard sci-fi because it's put a lot of thought into the physics of black holes and the different planets and gravity and things like that, even though it does involve some kind of unknowable extraplanar entities and things like that. So there's just some examples there of sci-fi that is based on hard ideas that has strong rules and are based on sound scientific principles. Now, soft sci-fi doesn't have to be based on any of those things. Characters are more important here, and just the kind of coolness factor of the world is a little bit more to the point. Something like John Carter of Mars was early, very, very, very soft sci-fi, where it's like, okay, this Civil War soldier is abducted by aliens and brought to Mars, and because on Mars they have less gravity in this world than they do on Earth, then John Carter can jump really high while he's on Mars, and he becomes a kind of a superhero while he's there. Logic takes a bit of a backseat to fun in soft sci-fi, or, I mean, it could be horror or something like that, but, like, having fun with the idea, I guess I would say. Science only has to be consistent in that world. It doesn't really have to work like real science would. There's going to be a stronger emphasis on things like history, sociology, economics, politics, or other, like we're changing other things besides. We're not really interacting as much with hard science like chemistry or light speed jumps. We don't have to worry about how much cargo is on your ship before it can make a light speed to a different sector, a light speed jump to a different sector, whereas in hard sci-fi, you kind of want to know, okay, do they have enough fuel to do that? Do they have enough, are they carrying too much weight to do that? Like, how exactly, what would it take to allow that in my world? And you can just sort of do a lot of hand waving in soft sci-fi. Tech levels can be used, I mean, we can essentially cross over into fantasy. It just has to maintain that veneer of plausibility. It should seem like there is some kind of rational explanation in the world, even if we don't go into a lot of detail on it. This is going to be everything from the Iron Giant, Back to the Future, Inception, Avatar, like things like this, which don't necessarily have to think through every single rule or the real implications of these technological adjustments that you're making. So, sci-fi is going to emphasize originality. Part of the premise is something we haven't seen before. We're wondering, like, what if this thing were possible? Or what if society advanced to the point where we started doing this? We are kind of coming to sci-fi for the idea, for some kind of new speculation on the world or where we're going as a species, or the effect certain technologies might have on human nature and behavior. Social commentary is a really key element. Subtlety is totally optional. You can be as in your face as you want with sci-fi. We've seen a lot of examples of, satire and things that have been used to comment on the world as it is in this lens of sci-fi. Very common, very expected in the genre. We want to emphasize cutting-edge ideas and progressive values, and it's about how things could potentially be. It's not really a place for regressive values and going back to these ideas of the past. It's about thinking what might be next. And there's a certain coolness factor to it. We just want to see awesome and unique things that are only possible in sci-fi worlds. Really cool imagery, alien species, thrills and action sequences, character moments, and things that, only could stem from a world that was shaped and molded by your speculative elements. So the most common movie genres that we're going to see here are going to be horror thriller, things like The Invisible Man, Alien, and The Fly, where we're going to say that the scientific principle is the threat, or it is creating a situation that leads to that threat. We have action, stories like The Matrix or Elysium, where we're going to use some scientific element is something we're fighting against. It is the rationale for the villain, or it's the villain power or something like that. Or it might be the thing that we are using to fight against that villain or that opposing force, or it might be both. Like in something like Men in Black, it's like aliens are the enemy and our characters are going to use alien technology to fight against them. Then we have adventure, Interstellar, Armageddon, and Gravity, and stories like this which don't necessarily revolve around interpersonal violence and conflict between intelligent entities as much. It might still have sequences of that, and it might still have elements of that, but it's not like the crux of the plot as much as an action story would be, which sort of like, Terminator revolves around violent conflict between intelligent entities, humans and robots, or it could be humans and aliens, or robots and mice, or whatever it is that you're doing. Action stories definitely hinge on this sense of interpersonal violence and conflict. But adventure will still involve danger, and think of something like The Core or Armageddon, right? Where it's like this situation will provide deadly thrills for our characters to try to succeed at through scientific means, but they aren't always going to require that kind of opposing villainous force that's working against your characters. And then we have things like drama, things like Gattaca, Her, Arrival, The Truman Show being a dramedy, I guess you would say. But these are stories that primarily are going to look at how these scientific elements or developments, speculative things, are going to affect how people interact with each other, or their relationships, the ways that they live their lives on a day-to-day basis. The sort of, we're going to ground it in the human experience a little bit more. There's more variations than this. We see sci-fi comedies and stuff like that, but in movies, this tends to be what people think of as this very broad spectrum. Let's move on to subgenres. So we have things like alternate history, which is going to be stuff like The Man in the High Castle, where we are sort of suggesting what if something happened differently in our current historical timeline, and we're sort of playing that out to its logical extension, or we're blowing that up larger than life to see what that could be like. And sometimes that might lead to additional scientific complications, like Man in the High Castle takes place in a world where the Nazis won World War II, and as a result, their sort of super science has created a 1960s world that has big computers and higher technology than we would normally have, like Wolfenstein, that kind of stuff. We have cyberpunk, which are going to be stories that usually are going to revolve around this clash between low culture and high culture. If we break that a little more cleanly, it's going to be like the punks versus the corporations is how we might think of cyberpunk. So the punks being the low elements of society, the hackers, the criminals, the people just scraping by. And there's going to be a huge gulf of inequality separating them from the elites, the corporate overlords, the gods of this world that have to, that run these office farms, that exploit people. It's kind of taking a lot of like mid to late 90s sort of concerns and blowing them up in a sci-fi way, adding in this kind of coolness factor that involves, this sort of edgelord cyber samurai with the katana is just like all the tropes that kind of evolve from just this rule of cool that we apply over top of this layer of social commentary in cyberpunk. We have dystopia, which is, very popular now, or was very popular for a while in recent years. Everything from your 1984 to your Hunger Games that suggest a different arrangement of society and technology so that this kind of evil force has taken over the government and society and is going to be making the rules now. And our characters are going to be fighting against that opposing oppressive force, or maybe they will have some other conflict just within that world. But dystopian stories usually look at the conflict between the government and the individual. We have farce, which are going to be comedies that are going to use sci-fi to just have fun and just come up with a funny idea, like Bill and Ted, two dumb stoners who go on a time-traveling adventure so they can write a really good book report, isn't it? Or they're trying to do like a presentation at the end for like a school project. So the stakes are sort of intentionally a little bit lower. We're sort of pretending like these two stoners could be big heroes in this world and kind of just meeting fun characters from throughout history and playing interesting games with them. We put Napoleon on a water slide, we pull pranks on Julius Caesar, whatever it is, then we just are having fun with the scientific ideas rather than wondering way too much about the specific implications or trying to unspool and unpack all these concepts of commentary and social change. Military sci-fi is going to be stuff like Starship Troopers, Edge of Tomorrow, where space marines versus some kind of threat that might be other space marines, or it could be an extraterrestrial or anything else. We have New Weird, which is kind of hard to pin down and define, but it has roots in things like cosmic Lovecraftian horror, things like Annihilation, where we're dealing with stuff that's sort of beyond human understanding. Social sci-fi or satire. We mentioned The Purge earlier, which is also like this, The Lobster, Idiocracy, where we're saying, what if society was different in such a way as to emphasize some element of society that we're trying to change or that we are trying to mock because it is worthy of derision? So what else? We have space opera. This is not actually opera, but this is referring to stories that are usually going to be kind of military sci-fi or adjacent to military, but we may have crossover with something like Sword and Planet at times too. But it's going to generally just look at characters that are crews of spaceships and perhaps space stations, satellites, things like that, as they attempt to accomplish goals. Those goals will often be exploration, adventure, warfare-based. They don't absolutely have to be. Sometimes we have this subgenre called planetary romance, which is linked to Sword and Planet, which is sort of pulp, old-school adventure things like John Carter, where we are sort of doing a space opera story, but in an old-fashioned context, and how in a world that is inspired by how people used to speculate about the future, not how they currently do. We have steampunk, which is going to be stuff like Mortal Engines, or Arcane, where we have sort of industrial revolution era technology that has been exaggerated to the point where it does things it can never normally do. We have your steam-powered computers, your coal-powered robots, stuff like that. And then we have superhero, which I think we've all seen a lot of examples of this, but some heroes are more based on science than others. We have heroes like Iron Man are entirely hinging on this idea of this reactor that allows you to, it's keeping him alive, and it's also powering his super suit that lets him fly and shoot missiles and all that kind of crazy stuff. So superhero stories that revolve around scientific principles and are at least kind of a little bit possible. It has to be a little more than he fell into a vat of goo and now he can shoot lasers out of his eyes. But then again, we could call even Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is sort of sci-fi also because, radiation or toxic sludge can mutate animals. It probably wouldn't turn them into ninjas that like pizza, but, it's sort of a comedic take on that element. Okay, what else? Genre terms to know, and then we are going to go right into our prompt section and the big idea. Yeah, so I think we're going to look at a few terms, then go into big idea, and then go right into some sci-fi movie prompts. I'm just going to give you a preview of the sort of stuff we'll be looking at. These are a few of our picture prompts for later. We have a few pages of these. Guy makes a bear suit to fight bears. We have a container that transports diseases that have no cure. We have the sign that says, "You've been here before, we just made sure you forgot." So maybe memory manipulation. And we have this 75-year-old Taiwanese man with a bike covered in phones to catch Pokemon. On this page, we have, I don't have any real rationale or justification for why I've included Pelvis Presley, but maybe that'll give you an idea for a sci-fi story. Or prisoners trading their organs for reduced sentences. And then we have a few other just prompts here that might give you some ideas. Crashing the space station, eating hamburgers or else you'll die, or billionaires becoming immortal to compound wealth forever. So I'd be thinking of these things when we get to the volunteer section in about 10 minutes, then maybe you'll have an idea already. Okay, so let's go into just a few of the terms to know and important stuff, and then we will move towards big idea and then go to volunteers. So, things that we should just know about as sci-fi writers. This is why I say you should be a fan of sci-fi and if you want to write it, because you have to, like, some of these things are just part of the vocabulary of the genre, and these are things that fans of this know, and that these are terms that you may not even have to go way out of your way to define within your story. So FTL stands for faster than light. It means travel, a spaceship or craft or being or entity that can move faster than light and therefore kind of get between galaxies. And maybe it's trivial in your world, maybe it's very difficult, whatever it is, FTL means traveling at light speed or faster. We have cyberspace, sort of referring to just the digital realm, and in some ways it may be a world that we can actually go into. Your characters might be able to interact, like the Matrix has a cyberspace kind of element, a VR world called the Matrix that we can go into and come out of. So in some senses, we use cyberspace just to refer to something like the internet. The internet on its own is a kind of cyberspace, but in stories, usually it's like one we want to have a little more fun with and interact with more, or say, an entity that can come in or out of cyberspace might be part of that story. I think some of the Hellraiser movies even touch on this. Uplifting is making animals smarter than they should be, creating, take a sentient creature and make it a sapient creature. Biodomes would be sort of secluded habitats that are able to sustain life in an otherwise unhospitable environment. Force fields, I think we've all heard of, and I believe this term originally comes from The Nightland by William Hope Hodgson from 1911, which was using this idea of light as a barrier. I think we all know this is sort of just a laser shield. Sometimes a force field is just repellent, sometimes it is solid, and sometimes it will dissolve your hand if you put it in there, so you can use that how you want. First contact is the very first experience mankind has with aliens. Megastructures are things like in the background here, if we've read Halo or played the games Halo, giant structures usually that exist in space or that could only be built in space. Generation ships are big spaceships that are filled with perhaps thousands of either colonists, or it could be embryos, or multiple generations of people that are used to restart a population on a different world. Post-apocalyptic stories, I think we know what this is. Dying Earth is pre-post-apocalyptic, so something like The Road, where the world is in the process of dying. Psionics are kind of like psychic powers that have some kind of psychic basis or scientific basis to them. So the Force technically is psionics after they introduced the idea of midichlorians kind of powering people's force abilities, being like a microbe that allows you to move things with your mind, stuff like that. I think we see this in other media like Mass Effect, David Cronenberg's Scanners, stuff like that. Utopia versus dystopia, utopia being an imagined false kind of perfect society, utopia being a dark society that exists to keep people under its boot heel in some way. Singularity would be this moment where machines become as smart as people. Upload or transfer of consciousness is going to be where we take our minds and put them in something else. And then last we have nanotech, which is lots and lots of little tiny robots. Whew, okay, that was a mouthful. So we've got plenty of different topics and ideas and terms to know, and all of these things could be your big idea. The big idea of any science fiction story is the central speculative element. So it sets your world apart from reality, and it guides what your characters are doing. It's going to comprise a central element of the threat or obstacle a lot of the time, or the way your characters must overcome that obstacle, or both. Like Men in Black, we're dealing with aliens, we're going to use laser guns to fight them. That is, the big idea is aliens coexisting with humans on Earth, and we're going to use science to fight against them too. So we're asking, what if this thing existed, or what if this technology advanced to this degree? What conflict would it create or solve? And so sci-fi movies and TV, as opposed to novels, this is the big difference. Movies and TV will usually only have one big idea, as opposed to a book, which can kind of have multiple big ideas that we are equally important. But in a movie or show, usually it's a big part of your hook. It's like saying, okay, in this show, people can transfer their consciousness to different bodies called sleeves. And as a result, people are sort of immortal now. You can move your mind from body to body to body and always have backups. You can swap to different skins, and we sort of explore that one idea as deeply as we can in the show of Altered Carbon. As opposed to a book that might have consciousness upload as one element. It might also have FTL travel. It might also have psionics. It might also have first contact. And it might also have nanotech playing huge roles too. Books just have more room to tackle multiple big ideas. Even a book shouldn't go way overboard, but in the world of science fiction novels, we expect them to cover more ground and kind of encompass larger narrative concepts. So movies and TV, you want to pare it down to one kind of central topic and a big idea that stems from that topic. So let's look at Minority Report. The topic is criminal justice. So we're going to use a speculative scientific way of examining what might that be like in the future, and what conflicts would that create or solve. The big idea is pre-crime, a police agency that arrests criminals before they act. So we can tell what people are going to do using this sort of scientific basis of, it is psychics, but we imagine that there might be some scientific reason why they're psychic. And then we are saying, what if there was this organization that could arrest people? Is that right? What problems would that cause? And in the case of the movie, it's our main character. It's predicted he's like the top cop at pre-crime. The next murder that they predict is one that he will commit. And he's like, I don't even know who that guy is. Why would I murder him? It leads to these interesting questions about predestination and free will and human choice. Ready Player One topic is VR and social media. The big idea is the Oasis, this worldwide metaverse that people can kind of log into, and it plays a big role in real life, even more so than an average video game would. It's like the biggest MMORPG ever, and people make fortunes on it. People live their whole lives on there. It's like an exaggeration of the MMORPG. Severance, the topic is corporate work life. The big idea is this procedure to separate an employee's mind into two distinct halves, the work version and the outside version, neither of which has any memory of what the other one does. So it's like a new person has been created, but they only ever experience life at work. And then your outside version, doesn't have any idea what you do at work. So that TV show digs very deep into that idea and sort of unpacks and unspools all the interesting conflicts that would result from that. But it still is all centered around that one idea. Even though it is a show, and shows do have more room to explore topics than a movie would, like a movie has to dig even deeper on, or chisel away even more around your core idea to kind of make a movie's premise work. TV shows still will usually kind of revolve around the same thing, even if it's going to involve multiple different stories or types of scenarios that stem from that same situation. Look at a show like Eureka, where it's like, okay, I guess I'm just anxious because the show is from like 2007 or something, but Eureka is like, there's this small town where a bunch of genius inventors live, and they're going to use this town to sort of try out new scientific ideas. So every episode, one of them might be, we have a time machine going crazy. The next episode might be, my shrink ray went crazy, and now it made me very small. But it all sort of is linked to this idea of the town full of science geniuses, and the town is like a testing ground for new scientific concepts. So it is still tied to the same core source, even if it is going to encompass a lot of different sort of episodic scenarios from there. So we don't have to look too much at, I think just in terms of time, we won't be able to get way too much into these different topics, but I think you guys have some ideas of the sorts of things that are relevant now, or that are that we've always wondered about or speculated about, things like aliens, AI, time travel, dystopia, VR, memory, uplifting, divination. All these things might be at the core of your movie, but we should try to keep things as cohesive as possible. In a movie or show, we don't have a ton of space to examine every facet of an alternate society in great detail, which is why I think sometimes we see sort of shallower world building in sci-fi movies and shows, because we just don't have that much space, and it leads to a lot of shortcuts, which can lead to worse stories sometimes. And that's why books have a big advantage. You just have so much more room to explore an idea from so many different angles. But try to, in movies and TV, pick one thing that you'll explore deeper, rather than including a bunch of different speculative elements, or if you do include multiple, try to have them share that same source. When we start adding too many sources, we start to enter the realm of very comic book style media, which is not necessarily terrible. It's just not really the emphasis that we're going to look at in terms of sci-fi class today. The main principles of sci-fi usually are not going to include everything and the kitchen sink. We're going to have less ideas that we explore deeper. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into keeping things cohesive for now, but just try to keep that in mind, how you can keep things feeling more central, more coherent, if the different scientific ideas in your story share that same source. Okay, I think we're going to go right into activities and prompts. So I'm going to just briefly go into loglines. If you don't know what a logline is, it's this one sentence that sort of looks like this template. Is when inciting incident occurs, an adjective protagonist must conflict before or in order to stakes. So we don't have to come up with perfect loglines today. You can sort of just talk through what the movie or what the show would be. But if you can form a logline for this, then you're welcome to. Let's look at the picture prompts, and I'll sort of leave one of these pages up for a second, just to give you guys a moment to look, and then you can raise a hand, and I will take volunteers from the chats. And we can start pitching and speculating. So you should pick one of these things that's interesting to you, and then you're going to talk through maybe your idea what a movie or show based on this could be. All right, there's our first page. I'm going to move to the second page. I think we all remember. If someone does Pelvis Presley, I will be very impressed. I will just say. Impressed? And then our last page. I also quite like the Hamburger Superman. All right, we have a volunteer, Fox. Hi, Fox. Feel free to come up on the stage.
Hello?
Hi, I can hear you.
Hi, how you doing? You okay?
Doing great. Do you have an idea based on one of these images?
Yeah, it was the one with the cure one. I think it was the message on the back of the van.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's apparently a real picture, so I guess maybe they do transport diseases like this sometimes. It's such an ominous warning, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, the idea that I thought of was, obviously with it being a sci-fi setting, was something major happened on planet Earth. Virus got out, and the only way we could defeat the virus is by leaving. So the groups of people leave, but one ship gets caught in a situation, and they crash land on this other planet, and it's full of vegetation, but it seems very Earth-like. There's a lot of similarities to Earth, and the answer for the cure is there because that's where this virus came from. So as the story progresses, they find out what's causing this virus, and they soon realize that they're actually on Mars when it was like Earth before Mars had its problems and its atmosphere stripped. So they have the cure. Now they have to figure out how to get back to save Earth where from. So yeah, that was my idea.
Sure. Yeah, there's a cool basis to that. If we say sort of that it's almost like Armageddon or something, right? Where it's like the last hope for humanity is a space voyage, or Interstellar is kind of like this too. It's a space voyage. But in this case, you're saying it's because a virus is devastating Earth that is of extraterrestrial origin. Therefore, the only cure for it can be found in space. Is that right?
Yeah, but I think they stumble upon... There was literally no hope for humanity on Earth. So the only way they could escape it is to leave Earth. And this one craft accidentally stumbled upon, say, a wormhole or a ripping fabric in time, and ended up on Mars in the far past, and realized that it was actually something on Mars caused the issues that we're having on. So whether an asteroid hit Mars and a speck of Mars dust or Mars rock hit Earth and started the pandemic that way, and there's no cure because obviously this pathogen has never been seen before, and they can't figure out how to fix it. So
this seems like a little more like a push for just like a twist or a reveal, I guess, towards the end of a story. Whereas when you started telling me that the Earth was in trouble because of the virus, I was thinking this is how we're going to try to save the Earth, which would make a lot of sense for a movie, right? Because if we already say the Earth is screwed, then there's no what do we do now that we have the antidote, or what do we do now that we have the vaccine to this disease that has devastated all of humanity? We can't do anything with it, right?
No, of course not. But I think that would be a great way into the story of them trying to figure out how to get home, and they could have little mini adventures of how to try and replicate what got them there and figure out how they managed to get to Mars, and try to somehow find someone who can help them, and hopefully get them back home.
Sure. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential there. With this sort of story, feels like it usually needs that ticking clock of like, Earth only has this much time left before we're past the point of no return. So maybe some element like that would be useful, where it's like we're nearing the dangerously low population level or something. Or it could be that maybe the germ does more than kills people. Maybe it kills plants and vegetation too, so it's actually killing the planet itself. That would be kind of neat. I don't think I've seen that in a movie. Like a pathogen that affects both biological and plant life. That could be neat.
Yeah, sounds good, yeah.
And then in that case, I think that might help to expand it a little beyond, because like this idea of pandemic-based stories, I imagine is not super appealing to people right now. Or maybe may not be ever again, or at some point I guess it will be, but it's for now a hard sell. But if we sort of say it's a germ that's killing the planet, that to me is kind of unique and cool, and it's not something that we've seen before. So the idea of the disease that has no cure, it's more than that. It's like this is a germ that will end all life. It's like it's like infectious antimatter almost. I think that's a neat,
like a planet, like a planet killer type.
Yeah, a planet killing microbe.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I like that idea. Yeah.
And then we have to transport a ship of that back to Earth. That's a pretty high stakes mission. And so, I mean, if there's space pirates, they're gonna be looking for that ship, right? Because that's gonna get the biggest ransom you could ever get, because it is hinging, like all of humanity's survival is hinging on whether the ship gets back to Earth. So we could do an action story too, where if maybe the inciting incident is, holy crap, we found the vaccine to save Earth. Then it's like, oh crap, but also in order to get back to Earth, we're going to have to get through the toughest space pirates in the whole galaxy.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Next. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like you were saying, obviously the bigger the odds, the better the storytelling, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for these ideas. That premise of space cure for space disease is a really good foundation for a movie or TV show. Probably this feels a little like a movie to me, this one, don't you think?
Possibly. Again, it depends on obviously if whoever's writing it, I suppose. Mm-hmm. I mean, they might take the idea and run with it and have their own ideas. But I was thinking like TV shows like I've not seen it return. I don't think is Lost in Space, the new one,
right?
Which is a shame because I actually really enjoyed that. So
this could be like a season of a show. I think you're saying, right? So this would be like, or I guess maybe this could be the stakes for the whole thing. But if it's this also you could also use the element of the space cure as just like an arc in a longer show.
Yeah, again, it could be a limited season. It could have a 3 episode or a special event type of TV show where there's only 3 made or 4 made. Well, that's happened a few times. So.
Yeah, I think that's a bit more common in the UK sort of model, but nowadays it's like in the limited series that we see on American TV, it could be anything. So thank you so much for these ideas.
Fair, yeah, no problem.
Let's get another volunteer. Looks like Meep has requested to speak. Hi, Meep.
All right. I'm going for the gold here. I'm taking 2 ideas. I'm taking this container has no cure and the Pelvis Presley idea.
Oh God. Okay, I'm ready. Hit us.
So it's a comedy, and I don't know why, but the idea is that that virus that has no cure is actually a disease that just mindlessly turns people into Elvis Presley impersonators.
I love this, actually. Go ahead.
And it basically creates an outbreak, and the cure for it is actually hidden underneath his mansion. But no one knows. But no one knows exactly where to find it. Pretty much everyone's just kind of become an Elvis Presley impersonator, and you only have I want to say maybe a handful of people that are basically trying to break through his mansion, fighting off the impersonators, who are basically zombies at this point.
It's like a zombie movie, yeah. I mean,
it's like a zombie movie to get to Elvis Presley's basement so they can get the cure for this virus. which is actually hidden in his least favorite food.
I love
Peanut
this. So like instead we like in the middle of the night, your characters are like huddling in their shelter with their guns, like, and instead of zombies moaning, we hear like a distant in the background, "I ain't nothing but a hound dog." Like we hear like,
Yeah.
like I kind of love this. I think you have to write this, but so I think in this version we're gonna have to have some way that this is at all feasible. So let's maybe say Elvis Presley's brain is maybe extracted from his corpse to be studied or something like that.
Yeah.
You know how they might exhume it to, like, I don't know, figure out what made him such a genius. It's like the 100th anniversary of his death.
It's genetic research gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, and maybe it gets like the brain sample gets contaminated. They drop it in the lab. They're like, "Oh crap! I dropped the brain in the green goo," and as a result of that, it has become sort of mutated and infectious. And like it's almost like the Thing, the John Carpenter, the Thing, where it's like even a little piece of it can infect you and turn you into a real hound dog.
Oh yeah.
and so I guess we're saying that the Elvises, though, are trying to prevent people from stopping this. Like once you become the Elvis, then it's sort of like a hive mind a little bit, I guess is what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe they're slaves to the original Elvis, and
I like that. They're slaves to the original Elvis.
yeah, they're
And
maybe the brain in the jar is like the sort of villain of the movie.
the
And of
one that's
course,
kind of keeping everything like sort of contained. And
yeah,
now
it would have a wig on it like this too, wouldn't it? It would definitely have like the Elvis wig on the brain.
now I'm just thinking, you finish this movie and they're like, "Oh, great. Now we need to ensure that this won't happen again." They're like, "Hey guys, it looks like there's like another project they were working on. But
Yeah.
don't touch that." The jar falls in and it's Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, I knew it. Or maybe we could do Aretha Franklin, or yeah, God, the possibilities are endless. This is hilarious. I hope you actually do write this because it's so original, and it takes that sort of familiar structure of, it's like a parody of zombie movies almost.
Oh yeah,
And then
it's like it's
makes it
like
ridiculous.
Zombieland but more absurd.
Yeah, or like I think there's an episode of Community that's a little bit like this. I think I think in that one it's a zombie parody, but they become infected with like singing. So they start. I think they become obsessed with Glee, so they start doing like
Oh yeah.
when they get infected by the zombies. I think it's great. I really do love this. Genuinely love this idea. So somebody go ahead, take this away. Elvis Presley the movie.
No. Call it Pelvirus.
Pelvirus. Well, in that case, I would expect maybe instead of a brain, it would be a pelvis. But I think a brain makes the most sense, probably. And put the glasses on it.
Oh, definitely.
Put the wig on it and put it in a jar. It's like a 1950s sort of horror comedy,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Definitely.
I really do think this is awesome. Nice work with this one.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. Please write that. All right. Another volunteer. We have a bunch of other options. We did pelvis. We did the disease. We've got the bear suit. We've got the memory manipulation. We've got the man with the 75-year-old man with 75 phones, it would seem. We've got the trading organs for reduced sentence, eating hamburgers or else you'll die, crashing the space station into the ocean, or billionaires living forever. Looks like we have Pollock, then Michelle. We'll start with Pollock. Hi, Pollock. I've invited you to the stage. You'll have to accept it and unmute your mic. Hi, are you there?
Hello.
Hi. All right.
I'm there.
Great. Which idea do you like?
I like the Superman with hamburgers, and can you show me the rest of the ideas? Because that's the only one I can remember.
Oh, sure. If you want. Yep, we have
The Superman with hamburgers.
organs for shorter jail sentences, or you could do any of these on here. I like the hamburger one, though. Do you want to
I
start
like
there?
the actually you've actually been here before. You just made me. We just made you forget.
Okay, let's do that one. Go ahead.
So, something that I have to come up right off the bat. Naturally, if we're doing the Superman with the hamburgers, it's going to involve a superhero of some sort?
It doesn't have to. It's up to you. These are just inspiration.
Or a disease that makes... Oh, I know. A disease that makes people crave a certain food.
Okay, sure, we could do that. Go ahead. So what do you think the movie or show would be?
What do you think the movie or show would be? Oh wait, we already had a show with the disease in it, though.
That's true. You could. I could come back if you want to do some thinking. I could call somebody else, then call you after. If you want to have a minute to get your thoughts together. Would you want to do that, or do you want to just come up with something off the top of your head?
All right.
Which one? What would you like to do? Oh, okay. I think he went back to the audience. All right. So I can call on him in a moment when he's ready. In the meantime, we'll take another volunteer. We have about 15 minutes. We can probably do 2 more. All right, Michelle.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. Hi, Michelle. Which picture do you like?
Which picture do I like?
Yep.
We're billionaires will become immortal. I like Superman with the burgers. I'm thinking that it's the infection is burgeritis, and I mean that sounds like it. That sounds like a disease, and people when they take a bite of like just put make up a brand name or put in a real brand name. I don't like McDonald's, but I love Whataburger. So people eat Whataburger burgers, and they unknowingly they've been infected with the burgeritis, and now they crave Whataburger burgers, and they just can't stop eating them, and they won't eat anything else, and it affects everyone over the age of 5.
Over the age of
like
5. Okay.
Kids yeah, because I mean, like a 3-year-old, they might want a little bit of a burger, but they're not going to eat the whole thing. And
Yeah.
and a 1-year-old, but they can't digest it. So I'd say over 5, everybody over 5 who eats a Whataburger, becomes infected with the burgeritis.
Okay, burgeritis from Whataburger. Why would that be? Is that due to is this a plot from the corporation that makes the burgers in the first place, or is it an accident, or why would that be? Do you think?
I'd say it's a processing accident at the manufacturing plant, and kind of almost like mad cow disease. It's maybe it's impossible to, or very very difficult to kill. Like COVID. It's very difficult to kill or control, and maybe it takes some government intervention, and it takes them a year or 2 to create an antivirus that help control your cravings, where you still have burgeritis, but now instead of eating 50 hamburgers a day, now you only eat 3 or 4.
Okay, sure. So this is I could see this working, and especially if it's an accident, then I could see maybe the company that makes the burgers is trying to stop people, but they're going to run into conflict there because people are like, no, you can't stop making them. We're going to demand that you make more.
You could have people break. They don't know that if for whatever reason the manufacturing plant that sent the beef to Whataburger, so it has a contract with Whataburger, and so they Whataburger can only get their beef from this processing company, and they have an exclusive contract with Whataburger, and so they can't sell their beef to any other place. They have to sell it to Whataburger, and Whataburger has to get it from this processing plant, and it's been infected. Maybe vegans. Maybe a mad vegan scientist invented a virus, put it in the processing plant because he or she is angry at people eating meat because he or she thinks that meat is destroying the world. And so, but wait, that wouldn't make any sense, because then, people
it sort of would make people eat more meat. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I could see maybe there's a logic there, though. Maybe it's a sort of very nihilistic vegan terrorist who is like, if you're going to keep over-consuming, then I'm going to show you all what that gets you. And the villain could be someone
exactly. That could be it.
It's sort of like, I'm going to devastate the world to prove my point.
Right, exactly. So, but I do want to work on mine, for just a moment, because I put it in the chat. Did you see it?
No, so we're doing picture prompts right now, not evaluating student loglines at the moment.
Picture prompts. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was just picture prompts. I do kind of also like, experts worried that billionaires will become immoral, or NASA plans to retire the International Space Station into the Pacific Ocean. But I don't know why that would be a real problem. And I say that because my boyfriend used to be a rocket scientist, and he used to be in charge of the controls for the International Space Station. So, I mean, I would, if this were, I were going to write that, I'd bring him on and say, well, why would this be a problem?
Yeah, maybe the basis, when we speculate what can make it a movie, maybe we can ask the question, why might that be a problem? We did
right.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, maybe there's something on there that that when it crashes, it releases some sort of toxin that kills off, like 70% of the world's plankton, which would seriously affect the world, um, you know, um, food tree.
Sure.
So.
Yep, good ideas, very good ideas. I think we covered the burger one was was our main picture prop. So thank you so much for giving us some great ideas there.
Okay, and are we going to do log lines and review that, or are we just doing picture prompts today?
Just picture prompts. This is only an hour class. There's only 10 minutes left.
Oh, okay, all right.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for volunteering. Nice ideas. Looks like we have time for one more. Becky.
Hi.
Hi, Becky.
I was interested in two of them. The billionaires living forever, and the due sentences for organ transplants.
Yeah, that one's almost a little like your book that you're already writing. Maybe we should look at the
yeah,
ones.
No.
Should we look at the different one?
I kind of have an idea for that. That's still it is different.
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to change it from prisoners in the sense of like criminals to just I'm more focusing on the billionaires becoming immortal aspect. But the downside is that yes, they're immortal, but their organs still fail with time. So their pancreas will still fail, their heart will still get heart disease. So they need to replace the organs to live forever.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's the billionaires and therefore they are the most powerful people, how are they going to get these while also, not looking really bad? So basically, it becomes illegal to not have a certain amount of money by the time you're a certain age. When you reach to be a certain age, which happens to also be when your organs are the most developed and healthiest.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a certain amount of money saved away, then you get taken in and have your organs removed for the you're not exactly getting, well, I suppose you're getting a reduced prison sentence because you're not going to die, but it's an option. You go to prison or the work camp, or you give your organs and die.
Yeah, I could also see in this world billionaires are going to have big private armies. I mean, imagine how much of a private army a billionaire can have now, and then think they live for 1,000 years and are very concerned with consolidating and maintaining their power. So maybe it's like you can donate your organs to them to serve, or maybe it's something like I'm trying to link the army idea together with the organ thing. Go ahead.
Well, it's kind of like a Hunger Games thing where basically it's got, I know your idea about the army, but I'm thinking like you can I can't link it to the army, but I was thinking that it's something like someone in one of the children in the family has to like donate their organs, and in return their family actually gets money to survive.
Sure.
That kind of thing.
We could also do in a world like this. It could be something like, "Holy crap! You have you have like a golden heart. You have like what's considered to be the perfect organ for a donation." That might make someone sort of special in a way, right? Or make them a person of interest to these billionaires, trying to track them down.
I did originally think about that because my stepdad's got a particular type of blood type. I can't remember what it is, but he has to, well, he doesn't have to, but he's encouraged to go and give blood every 3 months because his blood can literally be used in anybody even people who have like really rare blood types, and it's a really rare phenomenon. And so I was thinking about that like, they'd probably get into genetic engineering and be producing people just for organs.
For sure.
Oh yeah, and then you literally grow up in like, oh no, that's too much like The Island.
Yeah, or a
So
little,
you
what's it
grow
called?
up-
Never Let Me Go. That's another one that's sort of
Yeah.
like this. But imagine, so we could do an action story where, you know, every time a person is born, they test your blood or they test your organs to see if you have like the perfect ratio. And then if someone ends up later in life, we find out, oh my God, you've been concealing the fact that you have like the highest ratio of perfect organs per body. Then those billionaires are going to send their ninja armies after you, aren't they? They're going to be sending like agents to try to track you down. You have to escape from them to avoid having them steal your perfect organs.
Michelle just said an idea that I like, and actually reminds me of an episode of Seth MacFarlane is like Star Trek.
The Orville.
It's not Orville, yeah. So she said maybe with the Golden Heart is treated like a king or queen until they're harvested. That reminds me of an episode of the Orville where there is a kid. In that case, it's to be put into a machine that powers them, powers the whole like civilization. But yeah, they are treated like absolute royalty. But basically, they are going to be subjected to a life of as a child, like in this machine. So I kind of like the idea of this being this big, like, absolutely worshipped and doesn't fully understand that their life's going to come to an end when they reach 25 or whatever age organs mature at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this would be it's almost like a chosen one, but it's again like that kind of dark chosen one where it's the chosen one you don't want to be.
Don't want to be the chosen one.
Right, but still, makes a good character for a story, because it's like you've grown up. It's like essentially royalty, right?
And there is a twist, because see, the chosen one trope has been done to death, especially in books. It is an interesting twist on that trope.
Yeah, it's the worst thing in the whole galaxy to be, but they don't know it.
Yeah,
they don't even realize it, and then of course maybe the story is they're on the run, or they're trying to prevent the sacrifice from actually happening, or the procedure from happening, or maybe they're trying to find a way to...
Maybe it's the parent trying to stop it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the parent is afraid their kid is going to be killed to put their organs in this machine. They have to find a way to liberate them. That could be cool. Lots of great ideas today. Thank you guys so much. We do have to wrap up because we're at our time. Thank you, Becky. We are at the end of our class, and we have table reads starting in just a minute. Thank you guys so much for coming out to this one-off sci-fi writing workshop. Hope that you learned a bit, had some fun, came up with some good ideas, and we'd love to see you guys for more stuff soon. We have all these upcoming classes that we'd love to see you for, including later today. Table read starting now, copyright class at 5 p.m., and then we have Dialogue May 11th at 6, Scene Workshop May 14th at 1, and Monsters and Villains May 14th at 5. All of these are in Pacific time. Thanks again, guys. Look forward to seeing you again soon for your next Script Camp class or event.